Friends, subscribe and don't miss the boldest stories from the world of organized crime. And if this video hits your gangster soul, smash that like button.
Act 1. The Valentine's Day Massacre. Chicago. February 14, 1929. 10:30 a.m. 7 men stand inside a brick garage at 2122 North Clark Street. They're waiting for a shipment of hijacked whiskey, Canadian liquor, the good stuff, worth a fortune during Prohibition. Outside, a black Cadillac pulls up. It looks like a police car. 5 men step out. 2 wear Chicago police uniforms. The others wear long coats and fedoras. The men inside the garage barely react. Police raids are routine. You pay the fine, you walk. This is Chicago. Everyone's on someone's payroll. The uniformed officers bark orders. Line up against the wall. Hands up! The 7 men comply. Faces to the brick. Hands raised. Then the sound. Thompson submachine guns. 70 rounds fired in less than a minute. The distinctive rat-at-at-at that would become the signature of American gangland violence. When the smoke clears, 6 men lie dead. The 7th, Frank Gussenberg, has 14 bullets in his body. When police arrive minutes later and ask who shot him, he whispers, "Nobody shot me." He dies 3 hours later. The massacre makes front-page news across America. President Herbert Hoover reads the reports in Washington. His message is clear. "I want that man Capone in jail." But the man who ordered the hit, if he ordered it at all, is 2,000 miles away, lounging by a pool in Miami Beach, drinking orange juice, his alibi ironclad. His name is Alphonse Gabriel Capone. The press calls him Scarface. And for 7 years, he rules Chicago like an emperor. Act 2. Early years in Brooklyn. The making of a gangster. Brooklyn, New York. January 17, 1899. Alphonse Capone is born to Italian immigrants, Gabrielle and Teresa Capone, in a cramped tenement at 95 Navy Street. The 4th of 9 children. His father, a barber. His mother, a seamstress. The Capones aren't criminals. They're hard-working immigrants chasing the American dream. But the Brooklyn neighborhood where they raise their children, Navy Street, near the waterfront, is a training ground for something else entirely. Street gangs control the blocks. The 5 Points Gang. The Junior 40 Thieves. The Bowery Boys. Young Alphonse, called Al by his friends, watches and learns. He's a good student initially, maintaining decent grades. But at 14, everything changes. He strikes a female teacher during an argument. He's expelled. The education system loses him. The streets claim him. Al joins the 5 Points Gang as a teenager, working under Johnny Torrio, a gentleman gangster who would become his lifelong mentor. At 16, Capone lands a job as a bartender in Frankie Yale's brothel saloon, the Harvard Inn in Coney Island. It's at the Harvard Inn where Al Capone gets his scars. And the story behind them reveals everything about the man he would become. The night of the scars. Summer, 1917. The Harvard Inn is packed. Music, dancing, illegal liquor flowing freely. A man named Frank Galluccio enters with his girlfriend and his younger sister, Lena. 18-year-old Al Capone, working the door, notices Lena immediately. Dark hair. A gorgeous figure, as one account describes her. Capone approaches her. "And how are you this evening?" She ignores him. He persists. As the Galluccios prepare to leave, Capone makes one final comment about Lena's figure. Crude, inappropriate, loud enough for her brother to hear. Frank Galluccio is 5'2". Capone is stocky, powerful, much larger, but Galluccio is carrying a knife. The confrontation is swift. Galluccio slashes Capone 3 times across the left side of his face. Deep, ugly cuts. Blood everywhere. Bar towels pressed against the wounds. A rush to Coney Island Hospital. 30 stitches. 3 permanent scars running from his ear to his jaw. The nickname, Scarface, follows him for life. Capone hates it. He tells reporters he was wounded by a German machine gunner in World War I, fighting in France, a complete fabrication. He never served in combat. But here's the remarkable part. Years later, after Capone becomes Chicago's most powerful gangster, he hires Frank Galluccio as his bodyguard. It's the first glimpse of Capone's philosophy. Loyalty matters more than revenge. Respect the man who stands his ground. By 1918, at age 19, Capone marries May Coughlin, an Irish Catholic girl. She's already pregnant with their son, Albert Francis, Sonny Capone. He's a husband, a father, and increasingly, a criminal. When a bar fight in 1919 leaves a man dead, Johnny Torrio makes a call. Time for Al to leave New York. Destination, Chicago. Moving to Chicago and working for Torrio, The Apprenticeship. Chicago, 1920. Al Capone, age 20, steps off the train into a city transformed by Prohibition. The 18th Amendment has banned alcohol. The Volstead Act makes production and sale illegal. And overnight, America's thirst becomes a multi-million-dollar criminal opportunity. Johnny Torrio runs the Chicago operation for Big Jim Colosimo, the city's most powerful crime boss. Colosimo controls prostitution, gambling, and racketeering across the South Side. He owns over 150 brothels. His headquarters, the Four Deuces at 2222 South Wabash Avenue. Capone starts as a bouncer and bartender. But Torrio sees something in him: intelligence, ruthlessness, ambition. Capone becomes Torrio's bodyguard, then his enforcer. The system works like a machine. Speakeasies, illegal bars hidden behind legitimate storefronts. Breweries operating in warehouses. Gambling dens and basements. Brothels on every major street. And the money flows through politicians. Chicago in the 1920s isn't just corrupt, it's systematically corrupt. Aldermen take bribes. Police captains split profits. Judges dismiss cases. The entire city government operates as a subsidiary of organized crime. But Big Jim Colosimo refuses to adapt. When Prohibition begins, Torrio pushes him to enter bootlegging. Colosimo, newly married and content with his existing empire, says no. It's a fatal mistake. The murder of Big Jim Colosimo. May 11, 1920. 3 weeks after his wedding to singer Dale Winter, Big Jim Colosimo receives a phone call from Johnny Torrio. A shipment is arriving at Colosimo's cafe. Jim needs to be there. Colosimo arrives at his own restaurant. A gunman, hidden in the cloakroom, steps out and fires a single shot. The bullet enters Colosimo's brain behind his right ear. He dies instantly. Police suspect contract killer Frankie Yale traveled from New York to commit the murder at Torrio's request. No one is ever charged. The funeral is extravagant. 5,000 mourners, aldermen, congressmen, judges all attending. When they see Torrio enter Alderman Kenneth's car outside the brownstone, they realize the power has shifted. Johnny Torrio now controls the Chicago outfit, and Al Capone is his right-hand man. For the next 5 years, they build an empire. Speakeasies multiply. Breweries operate around the clock. The business expands into the suburbs: Cicero, Burnham, South Chicago. Torrio negotiates territorial agreements with rival gangs. He's a businessman first, a gangster second. Violence is expensive. Cooperation is profitable. But not everyone wants peace. The Northside Gang, led by Dion O'Banion, controls the Irish neighborhoods. O'Banion hates Torrio. He hates Capone. And in 1924, the tension explodes. November 10, 1924. 3 men enter O'Banion's flower shop and shoot him dead. The killers, Frankie Yale, John Scalise, and Albert Anselmi, escape. O'Banion's death places Hemi Weiss at the head of the Northside Gang. Weiss vows revenge. January 24, 1925. Johnny Torrio and his wife are ambushed outside their home. Weiss, Vincent Drucci, and Bugs Moran open fire. Torrio is shot multiple times: jaw, chest, abdomen, groin. He nearly dies. After 9 months recovering and serving time on a pre-existing charge, Torrio makes a decision. He's out. He hands control of the entire Chicago outfit to 26-year-old Al Capone and flees to New York. The student has become the master. Act 4. Capone takes over Chicago, the emperor of the underworld. 1925. Al Capone, 26 years old, now controls the most profitable criminal organization in America. Conservative estimates suggest the Chicago outfit's annual income reaches $105 million, roughly $1.8 billion in today's money. Weekly payroll, $300,000. Annual bribes to police and politicians, $15 million. By 1929, Capone's personal income exceeds $40 million annually. He doesn't hide. He doesn't run. He rules. Capone operates from the Lexington Hotel on South Michigan Avenue, an entire floor dedicated to his offices. Bodyguards surround him. A bulletproof Cadillac waits outside. He wears custom-tailored silk suits, diamond rings, pearl gray spats. He attends the opera. He tips lavishly. He shakes hands with politicians at City Hall. The public adores him. During the Depression, Capone opened soup kitchens feeding thousands of unemployed Chicagoans. Newspapers photograph him serving Thanksgiving dinners. He's quoted saying, "Some call it bootlegging. Some call it racketeering. I call it a business." But behind the public image, Capone rules through calculated violence. Any bar that refuses to buy his beer gets bombed. During the 1920s, an estimated 100 people are killed in such bombings. Rivals who challenge his territory disappear. Bodies are found in ditches, faces unrecognizable, bullet wounds to the back of the head. And Capone expands relentlessly, buying judges, bribing prosecutors, placing allies in city government. During the 1928 Pineapple primary election, named for the hand grenades thrown at polling stations, Capone's bomber James Belcastro targets voting booths where Thompson's opponents has support. At least 15 people die. Chicago isn't just corrupt. It's lawless. But Capone's empire has cracks. The Northside Gang, now led by Bugs Moran, refuses to submit. Hemi Weiss is dead, killed in 1926. Vincent Drucci is dead, killed in 1927. Bugs Moran remains, and he's planning something. So Capone plans first. Act 5. The War with Bugs Moran, Blood in the Streets. The conflict between Al Capone and Bugs Moran isn't just business, it's existential. Moran controls Chicago's north side. Capone controls the south side and west side. Both want total domination. Assassination attempts become routine. Bombs explode outside restaurants. Cars are machine gunned on city streets. Capone survives multiple ambushes. Once, over 1,000 bullets are fired at his motorcade in Cicero. In 1927, rival gangster Joseph Aiello places a $50,000 bounty on Capone's head. At least 10 gunmen try to collect. All of them end up dead. Capone's enforcer during this period is Jack, Machine Gun, McGurn, a stone-cold killer who favors the Thompson submachine gun. McGurn has killed dozens. He's efficient, ruthless, loyal. By early 1929, Capone decides the war must end. Not through negotiation, through annihilation. The plan: lure Bugs Moran and his top men to a garage on North Clark Street. Tell them a shipment of hijacked Canadian whiskey is arriving. Then eliminate them all. McGurn orchestrates the details. The fake police uniforms. The stolen Cadillac modified to look like a police car. The killers, probably Fred Burke and members of Detroit's Purple Gang, associates with no faces known to the Northsiders. February 14, 1929. Valentine's Day. At 10:30 a.m., 7 members and associates of Moran's gang gather inside SMC Cartage Company garage at 2122 North Clark Street. They're waiting for the whiskey delivery. The fake police car arrives. 2 uniformed officers and 3 men in civilian clothes enter. The victims, thinking it's a routine police raid, line up against the wall, hands up. Then the guns open fire. Thompson submachine guns. 70 rounds. A shotgun blast. 6 dead immediately. 1 survives long enough to tell police, "Nobody shot me." But here's the cruel irony. Bugs Moran isn't there. He's running late. He sees the police car outside and decides not to enter. He survives purely by chance. The massacre shocks America. Headlines scream across the nation. The violence is too brazen, too public, too savage. And President Herbert Hoover issues his mandate. "I want that man Capone in jail." Act 6. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. The beginning of the end. The aftermath of the Valentine's Day Massacre isn't what Capone expects. Yes, Moran's gang is crippled. Yes, the North Side is now vulnerable. But the public outrage is unprecedented. Americans have tolerated bootlegging. They've accepted speakeasies. Many secretly admire gangsters as Robin Hood figures defying an unpopular law. But 7 men executed against a wall? That's different. Congress begins discussing federal legislation to regulate Thompson submachine guns. Newspapers demand action. The pressure on President Hoover becomes overwhelming. After the massacre, Hoover authorizes a 2-pronged federal investigation. One team, led by Prohibition agent Eliot Ness, will target Capone's breweries and bootlegging operations. The other, led by IRS agents Elmer Eyre and Frank Wilson, will investigate his finances. Capone, meanwhile, tries to lay low. In May 1929, he arranges to be arrested on a minor weapons charge in Philadelphia. He serves 9 comfortable months in Eastern State Penitentiary's luxury cell, carpet, furniture, radio. When he's released in March 1930, he thinks the heat has passed. He's wrong. The Untouchables and the Tax Men. Eliot Ness assembles a team of incorruptible Prohibition agents, carefully vetted, impossible to bribe. The press nicknames them the Untouchables. Beginning in March 1931, they raid Capone's breweries across Chicago. Within 6 months, they destroy operations worth over $500,000 and cost Capone an additional $2 million in lost income. Ness is excellent at publicity, breaking down doors, calling reporters to photograph the raids, smashing beer barrels with axes. But he's not building a legal case. There are no records, no direct connections to Capone himself. The real work is happening quietly. Frank Wilson, an IRS investigator working under guard after learning Capone has imported New York gunmen with a contract to kill him, spends 2 years analyzing Capone's finances. Wilson tracks custom suits, telephone bills, limousines, the Palm Island Miami estate, every expenditure. He finds ledgers from the ship, a Capone-owned gambling house in Cicero, documenting profits from 1924 to 1926. The ledgers prove Capone earned income, yet he filed no tax returns. In June 1931, two indictments are issued. First, income tax evasion for 1925 to 1929. Second, 5,000 counts of conspiracy to violate the Volstead Act. Capone's lawyers negotiate a plea deal, guilty plea in exchange for 2.5 years. But Judge James Wilkerson has other plans. Act 7, Downfall, Taxes, Prison, Alcatraz. The trial. October 6, 1931. Federal Courthouse, Chicago. Capone arrives wearing a silk shirt, pearl gray spats, polished brown shoes, and white powder covering his facial scars. He smiles at reporters. Then Judge Wilkerson drops a bombshell. Judge Edwards has another trial commencing today. Wilkerson tells the bailiff. Go to his courtroom and bring me his entire panel of jurors. Take my entire panel to Judge Edwards. The jury switch is brilliant. Capone had bribed the original jury pool. Weeks of preparation, thousands in payoffs. Now, 60 new jurors from another case enter the courtroom. Capone's plan collapses. When Wilkerson informs Capone he's not bound by any plea agreement and that Capone must take the stand and answer questions under oath, Capone withdraws his guilty plea. The case goes to trial. Prosecutors present ledgers, eyewitnesses, and testimony from former Capone employees Fred Reese and Lou Shumway, who made entries in the ship's gambling records. U.S. Attorney George Johnson tells the jury, "This is a case that future generations will remember. They will remember it because it will establish whether a man can so conduct his affairs that he is above the government and above the law." October 18, 1931. After deliberating, the jury returns its verdict, guilty on 5 counts of income tax evasion, covering 1925 to 1929, not guilty on 17 other counts. November 24, 1931. Judge Wilkerson sentences Capone to 11 years in federal prison, $50,000 in fines, $7,692 in court costs, plus $215,000 in back taxes with interest. It's the harshest sentence ever imposed for tax evasion. Appeals fail. In May 1932, Capone enters Atlanta U.S. Penitentiary, age 33. Alcatraz. In Atlanta, Capone receives special privileges, better food, private visitors, telephone access. When this becomes public, the federal government acts. August 1934. Capone is transferred to Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, a maximum security prison on an island in San Francisco Bay, specifically designed to hold America's most dangerous criminals. At Alcatraz, there are no privileges. Capone is inmate number 85. He mops floors. He works in the prison laundry. In 1936, he's stabbed by fellow inmate James C. Lucas. Superficial wounds, but a reminder that even here, he's a target. He's permitted to play banjo in the prison band, the Rock Islanders, which gives Sunday concerts. But something is destroying him from within. Capone had contracted syphilis years earlier, likely in his early 20s. Untreated, the disease progresses to neurosyphilis, attacking his brain. By 1938, he's hospitalized with advanced symptoms. His mental capacity deteriorates. He suffers hallucinations, confusion, dementia. November 1939. Suffering from paresis, the late stage of syphilis, Capone is released early and enters a Baltimore hospital for treatment. He's 40 years old. His mind is gone. The final years. Capone retires to his Palm Island estate in Miami Beach, Florida. He lives there with his wife May and their son Sonny, now a young man. The man who once ruled Chicago can no longer recognize faces. He wanders his mansion in pajamas. He fishes from his dock, but forgets where he is. His bodyguards are gone. His empire is memory. Old enemies visit, mocking him. Former allies avoid him. January 25, 1947. Al Capone suffers cardiac arrest and dies at age 48. The official cause: complications from syphilis. His funeral is small. A few family members. No gangsters. No politicians. No reporters. The man the newspapers called public enemy number one dies forgotten, broken, and alone. Al Capone controlled Chicago for 7 years. He made roughly $40 million annually at the height of his power. He survived countless assassination attempts. He corrupted an entire city government, and he was brought down by an accountant with a ledger. The criminal legacy. Capone didn't invent organized crime, but he perfected it. Before Capone, gangs were chaotic, territorial, violent, but uncoordinated. Capone ran the Chicago outfit like a corporation: hierarchy, specialization, diversification, vertical integration. He controlled production, breweries, distribution, trucks and drivers, retail, speakeasies, enforcement, gunmen and protection, politicians and police. Every aspect of the operation was managed. This model influenced organized crime for decades. The 5 families in New York, the Detroit Partnership, crime syndicates across America, they studied Capone's methods. The 1932 film Scarface, The Shame of a Nation, directed by Howard Hawks and starring Paul Muni, loosely depicted Capone's life. Capone reportedly obtained a copy for private screenings. Hollywood has never stopped telling his story. The Untouchables, 1987. Boardwalk Empire, 2010 to 2014. Capone, 2020. Books, documentaries, podcasts. Why does he endure? Because Al Capone embodies a uniquely American contradiction: the outlaw who becomes an icon. He was a murderer who fed the poor, a bootlegger during Prohibition, providing a service millions wanted, a brutal gangster who presented himself as a businessman. Americans love that contradiction. The bad guy with charm, the criminal with a code. But here's what often gets forgotten. Capone left a trail of bodies, hundreds of murders, thousands of lives destroyed by addiction, debt, and violence. He corrupted democracy, bought judges, and made mockery of law. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre remains unsolved. Officially, no one was ever charged. Unofficially, everyone knows. When historians reflect on Prohibition, they cite Capone as evidence the policy failed, that attempting to legislate morality creates criminal empires. When criminologists study organized crime, they analyze Capone's structure as the template. When filmmakers need a gangster, they reference Capone. The final question: was Capone brought to justice? Yes, he served 11 years, lost his mind, and died powerless. But also no, he was never convicted of murder, never answered for the Valentine's Day Massacre, never faced trial for the dozens, perhaps hundreds, of deaths ordered from his office. He went to prison for tax evasion, not for the blood. That's his legacy. The most notorious gangster in American history, imprisoned not for what he did, but for what he didn't pay. In the Cook County Archives in Chicago, there's a file labeled Capone, Alphonse, Homicide Investigations. It contains reports on 63 unsolved murders connected to his organization. 63 files. 63 dead men. 63 families destroyed. Not one conviction. Al Capone called himself a businessman. The newspapers called him public enemy number one. History calls him the definitive American gangster. But in the end, what brought him down wasn't the murders, the bootlegging, or the corruption. It was math, ledgers, income statements. Because in America, you can get away with murder, but you can't get away with not paying your taxes.